Welcome to our podcast where we dive deep into the evolving conversations in sports. Today, we're focusing on one of the most pressing issues in sports, mental health. For decades, athletes have been celebrated for their physical strength, but we're only just now beginning to appreciate the importance of mental well-being. With icons like Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, and Kevin Love leading the change, mental health is finally taking center stage in the sports world. We'll explore the shifting dialogue around mental health, challenges athletes face, innovative solutions, the role of fans in the media, and recommendations for systemic change.
So let's start with how mental health conversations in sports are changing. Naomi Osaka's decision to withdraw from the 2021 French Open was a pretty pivotal moment. She was going through long bouts of depression and anxiety and kind of challenged the push through mentality that's long dominated sports culture. Julia Wilson's USC Annenberg article really highlighted this, where Osaka was kind of a catalyst for change, sparking global conversations about athlete well-being. Clearly, Simone Biles echoed this at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, where she prioritized her mental health over competing. She stated that she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. I think it's really important for athletes to take a step back and understand that competing can really influence one's well-being no matter the level of stage they're on. And being one of the most famous athletes in the world, her decision was really important and sent a message that even the best athletes are human too. But why is this topic so important now? Social media like Instagram and TikTok play a huge role. Unlike the past, like athletes nowadays have direct access to their fans and can share their stories without traditional media filters. They're using these platforms to normalize discussions about mental health and shatter the myth of unbreakable resilience. We also see a shift in governing bodies and organizations addressing mental health. As Thomas Shad reported for NBC, U.S. Olympians preparing for the 2024 Olympics are integrating mental health practices into their training, which is a pretty significant cultural shift and emphasizing that mental health is just important as one's physical health. In one article I read on NBC, dozens of athletes from the US shared their mental health experience in preparation for the Olympics, all echoing the same message of its importance. But there's still a lot of work to do. While these conversations are more visible, challenges remain, something we'll explore in the next section.
Thanks, James. Let's dive into specific challenges that athletes face when it comes to mental health. First, there's performance pressure.
Thanks, James. Let's dive into the specific challenges athletes face when it comes to mental health. First, there's performance pressure. As Simon Rice's systemic review highlights, elite athletes operate in high-stress environments where failure is not an option. Injuries, overtraining, and career transitions compound this stress, leading to anxiety, depression, and even substance abuse. Societal pressures add another level. Take Antonio Brown's story. As reported by Rob Madej, after a high-profile meltdown on the field, fans mocked Antonio instead of showing him empathy. This is a recurring issue athletes face. Athletes are seen as entertainers first and then individuals second. And then there's the stigma. Sky Review shows that male athletes in particular face barriers by just seeking help because of the cultural norms around masculinity. They're expected to be tough and emotionally detached, standards that are not just unrealistic but extremely harmful. Racial trauma also plays a huge role. The Conversation article on English footballers reveals that the devastating impact of racist abuse on young players, like Buke Asaka. After missing a penalty kick in a major match, they faced a flood of hate, leading to anxiety and depression. These challenges highlight the systemic nature of the problem. It's not just about the individual and the struggles of being within the sport. It's about the culture of the sport as a whole. But there is hope. In the next section, we'll explore these solutions.
Thank you, Sophia. So how about we move on to the merely addressing mental illness to fostering what some researchers call mental health. One approach comes from Mark Uphill, who advocates for focusing on overall well-being rather than just fixing our problems. He introduced a sort of two-continuum model, which shows that mental health and mental illness exist on separate axes. This means that you can experience challenges like anxiety while still finding ways to thrive. For example, Simone Biles has openly navigated mental health struggles while maintaining an incredibly successful career. Her story proves that athletes can be both vulnerable as well as resilient. The two-continuum model can encourage us to support people not just when they're struggling, but also when they're doing well, helping them sustain that positive state. This approach can reshape support systems in workplaces, schools, and communities. For instance, if schools embrace this model, they could offer tools and resources that enhance everyone's well-being, not just for those diagnosed with conditions, but as a universal support system. By looking at the system positively, it is important for athletes to always ask themselves, how can I enhance my well-being today, instead of how can I avoid feeling bad? I think that having this positive shift in normalizing not being okay between peers and fellow athletes would be extremely beneficial in showing that everyone has a mental health journey in their own way. The idea of mental wealth isn't just theoretical, it has practical applications. Interventions like mindfulness training, resilience building exercises, and positive psychology practices can help athletes flourish. The ISSP Position Stand article emphasizes these strategies, along with creating culturally supportive environments. This holistic perspective is also highlighted in Monica Sain's article from American Public University. She stresses the importance of integrating mental health care into athletic programs, combining it with physical training to prevent burnout. Ultimately, this is about shifting the culture of sports. Mental health isn't just about avoiding illness, it's about building strength, just like physical training. But change doesn't happen in a vacuum. The role of fans and the media is also critical, which we'll discuss next.
Fans in the media have such a big role in shaping how mental health is discussed in sports. So let's start with the fans. Take the Euro 2020 final, for example. After missing penalty shots, Bukayo Saka and Jadon Sancho were hit with a flood of racist abuse, online and even in public. Having been in London during the time, it was crazy to witness the negative attitudes that the public held. These are young athletes, with Saka having been only 19, yet they were subject to relentless hate. As the conversation article points out, this kind of behavior can have a devastating impact, leading them questioning the futures in their sport. But this isn't a new phenomenon. Back in 1998, David Beckham faced a similar storm of criticism after being sent off in a World Cup match against Argentina. Fans in the media turned him into a national scapegoat, with headlines attacking him and even death threats coming his way. The emotional toll on Beckham was immense, showing how even seasoned athletes can be deeply affected by fan and media backlash. While his story eventually became one of resilience, it highlights the enduring problem of excessive scrutiny and the need for more compassion and understanding in sports. Therefore, it can be easily said that fans have so much power. They can either uplift athletes in tough moments or contribute to their struggles. Imagine how different things would be if the focus was on the support rather than blame. And then there's the media. Rob Mahdi's article on Antonio Brown shows how media coverage can make things worse by sensationalizing athletes' struggles. Instead of compassion, Brown's issues were often mocked, which only reinforces stigma and make it harder for others to seek help at times when it may be most needed. But we've seen progress. Tom Schott's NBC piece highlights how stories about Michael Phelps and Kevin Love focus on their journey to recovery, showing vulnerability as a strength. This kind of coverage helps normalize the conversations and offers hope for the future of sports industry and how mental health struggles are handled. So here's the real question. As fans in the media, are we supporting athletes when they need it most, or are you adding to the pressure? Our actions and words matter more than we may think.
Thank you for that, Marfa. Just to wrap this up, I want to talk about actionable solutions for systemic change. Speaking from experience of growing up a competitive athlete while facing mental health challenges through my adolescence, there was never an understanding or patience that allowed for me to take care of myself. I was always having to put my well-being aside to focus on my sport, which resulted in an inability to have athletic success or mental and emotional balance. It's crucial for governing bodies in athletics to prioritize mental health. This includes hiring mental health professionals, offering regular check-ins, and making resources accessible. The U.S. Olympics team integration of mental health practices is a great model to follow. They set a strong tone for how we should be tending to the needs of athletes. Athletes are being trained and conditioned for their sport. Their learning should extend into mental health literacy and advocacy. This not only helps them take care of themselves, but also empowers them to support their peers. While tangible action is necessary to aid the well-being of athletes, organizations must address the stigma surrounding mental health on a societal level, especially within competitive sports. As Marxer's article argues, creating safe spaces for athletes to express vulnerability is essential in ways like normalizing therapy and encouraging open conversations within teams. Finally, as much as we need to prioritize needs, we also must focus on prevention. The ISSP Position Stand and Monica Sands' articles that Holden addressed both highlight the importance of holistic approaches that integrate mental health with physical training. These practices should be the norm, not the exception. So what's the bottom line? Change requires collaboration. Athletes, fans, media, and organizations all have a role to play in creating a healthier, more supportive sports culture.
Mental health in sports isn't just an athlete issue, it's a human issue.
We've seen how culture shifts, innovative approaches, and systemic changes can make a difference.
But the work doesn't stop here. We all have a role to play, whether we're athletes, fans, or part of the sports industry.
Let's continue to push for a culture that values mental health as much as physical performance.
This has been our podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Let's keep this conversation going.